Coaching in Session,
your exclusive destination for unparalleled personal and professional growth.
With your host, Michael Rearden.
Whether you choose to live within limits or break free, your mindset journey begins here.
I know I'm not the only one when I look at life for how fragile it can be. Look at life for in days, weeks, months, or maybe years. And of course, we put it all together and we can get a lifetime. A lifetime can be different for different people. A lifetime could be just a couple years. A lifetime, maybe even as short as months, maybe even days. I think of people who have lost loved ones, maybe before they can even take their first breath. I think of people who have brought someone into the world and they had to bury them. Parents, grandparents. And we can see people that we have grown up with sometimes lose their lives, and we can realize just how fragile life is. It's difficult sometimes to look at life as a whole and to say, what is the meaning when someone is going through all those hardships and all those moments of grief? Because it's something where you might have been with someone for days, weeks, months, years. You never put into your mind the concept that one day they might not be around anymore. This is not even to talk about death, right? Like just being around anymore. Like how many people have you grown up with or acclimated with, and sure enough, down the road, you never hear from them again. The people you went to college with or high school with or elementary school with, maybe they were just part of that moment, that part of that section of your life. And then all of a sudden now you're focused on a new chapter. But then when you get closer to the end, you're ending the story where you think, is I guess you could say the height of everything. You can be paying attention a lot more. Just recently, a client of mine had passed away, and he was 1 year older than me. And I think it's crazy, like not for my life, like my life is whatever, but, I think about his life, what type of person he was. He was a good man, a very good man, kind, sweet. I mean, he would give you the shirt off his back type of man. One of the things I helped him with was his dating, right? He wanted to find, someone he could spend his life with, start a family with. And so we were doing the work, and he was very picky when it came to trying to find the person. And I said, you know what? You should be picky. You should be as picky as you want to be, because this is the person that you're going to be spending your life with. And you better as well be the best damn person ever, right? It's like, yeah. And so he was very specific in what he desired, from hair color to ethnicity to, of course, the values and things like that. He knew what he wanted, and it's great, right? I love for when people know what they want. However, sometimes when you are so specific, it's more challenging to find a person, because if you don't want to move, or if you don't want to live outside or look outside of your comfort zone, which was Austin, it would be more challenging to find the right person, because maybe your person's not in Austin. Maybe they're in Florida, right? Maybe they're in Maine. And so we would have to look at more than just our area. But then it gets like, no, like they should be here already. So it was kind of like a very optimistic approach, I guess you can say. But we did the work, right? And he was able to go on all the dates, and the dating scene is just very interesting when it comes to men looking for families today, because there's going to be things where maybe there's going to be some deal breakers. Maybe they have kids. Maybe they don't live around an area or whatever it be. Like there could be so many deal breakers. And he would have short-term girlfriends he would try out, like they would seem like a good fit, and he would try them out for a little bit. And there was just always something that came up. It was like, this is not going to work out. So he was a man who knew what he wanted. I could appreciate that. But then I now look at, the idea of legacy and the idea of what he left behind. And he has done great work, fabulous work. He has left behind things. His legacy will stand the test of time. But lineage, no. Right? Maybe his family, siblings, sure, right? But it's something I even look back when I lost friends in high school and college. It was one of those things where it didn't really impact you so much because you didn't really understand what a life was or a lifetime was. Because we can look at just our growing ups. I remember going to school, got to spend a year in this grade, first grade, second grade, third grade, and it felt like a lifetime. And then finally summer vacation came. And I'm like, thank goodness, right? That was a long year. But then, eventually the years start flying by. Just yesterday was January. And look at where we are today. And I think of, did we do what we needed to do the past 6 months? I just talked about that on the previous episode because it happens so quick, life. My brother is 40 this year. And I mean, we look at George Foreman, he just passed away a couple months ago. He was 76. And so he's maybe at the halfway point. I don't want my brother, to live to only 80. I want him to live to 140, It's one of those things where sometimes we have to deal with the grief that comes in life. Sometimes it happens at a young age. I remember there was a girl, her name was Sarah. She had lost someone, and I think we were, I think it was sophomore year, I believe. Maybe freshman or junior year. It could have been senior year, I forget. But, I remember one day she was just in class and she was crying. She had to go to a counselor. And, she had lost someone. And I didn't know what loss was at the time. The first person I lost was a friend. And then, of course, family members and things like that. And people who have helped raise me. And you start to look at how life is and so fragile. And I think, you pick up a newborn. I got kids and you pick them up and you're just like, whoa, like how delicate they are. Life can be delicate. Like, ever heard a chef talk about fish and how fish is so delicate and you have to know how to cook it. And in life is so delicate. You have to know how to live it. Some people, they live haphazardly. They live like there's no end, right? They will flaunt time like they have an abundance of it. They will say, I'll do it tomorrow. Sure enough, maybe tomorrow will come. Hopefully tomorrow will come. But sometimes we have to navigate the moments that don't come, the moments that will never arrive, the moments that might have been or once were. And we look at them and we say, wow, this is some introspection to what life is. Sometimes we can't see it when we're so busy. We're so busy doing what we have to do, taking care of the kids. We sacrifice so much, our health, our brain health, our mental health, everything. And we wonder why things are not going our way. Because the sacrifices we make might not be beneficial to the ones that are around us, the ones that we love. We talked about family business. Is it even appropriate for us to do that? Because if we are working so many hours a day and our kids are yearning for a moment of our time and we don't have that moment, I'm telling you, one of the biggest regrets you'll ever have in your life. I have seen it with clients and I have seen it repaired with clients. So it's not like it's a death sentence. I don't want you to feel as if it's a death sentence, but it becomes challenging for many years of your life, trying to create those bonds once again. And it's so funny because me even speaking to the kids, because I work with families, the kids are like, I never thought that I would give my parents another chance because they were absent, right? So their kids are like, okay, I'm writing you off, right? But that right there is giving up and losing someone before they're gone. Literally, like before they're in the ground. Like you would say, you're dead to me. And I just think like, whoa, like how far can we go, go as people to, to belittle a life for even as it, they're still alive, that we can say that you're dead to me. I think of like the people who are gone, who can't even have more than a memory, in someone else's mind today, what it entails to truly live. Because life is a series of challenges and ups and downs and good moments and bad moments, of course. And, moments where you might feel like you don't want to go on because it's too difficult. Moments when you feel like you won't go on. I remember, I look back and it's funny, but it's not funny, was when I had Omicron or something, right? My wife loves bringing stuff back from work. She works in a hospital. So she loves getting me sick, like whenever there's a pandemic or virus. So I already know when there's one, I won't get sick naturally, but she will bring it home to try to kill me, right? Whatever, right? I know I'm going to survive. Well, either way, during one of those times, she had went on a vacation and she brought back this virus. It was terrible. I have never been more sick in my life. I think of, just how I was literally struggling to eat and struggling to drink. And there was this one moment when I'm like on the floor and I'm like, all right, this is it. I'm done. I'm done. And I'm like, close my eyes. But it didn't feel like that. It just felt like I was going to go to sleep. And that's what I did. So I woke up and I was on the floor and I was like, okay, I got a little bit of energy. Let me make it back to the bed. And I made it back to the bed. And, I still had work to do that day. And so I got the work done later in the evening. And it was so funny because, I was so dehydrated and everything and tired. I was drinking Powerade and I was like, all right, I'm drinking this Powerade. I don't care what happens. I just gulped down the Powerade. I know you're not supposed to do it. I gulped it down. I was like, whatever happens, happens, like YOLO in a sense. But then nothing happened. It was a very interesting turn of events, for me suffering all day, for me doing something that I typically know I shouldn't have done, for me doing it. And now things have changed. And I can look back at that moment, maybe close to death. And I can say it was a mindset shift that happened during that moment of me trying to sustain, to me reframing from holding on to anything else. And the analogy, the metaphor I'm going to be using was the Powerade. Powerade was, I believe, a green one. It was the melon flavor. It was delicious. It was one of my favorite. I like the blue one too. I was trying to savor every little bit. I was trying to, not use it all, because what if I needed something else? I had to leave something in the tank. But it wasn't until the moment I said, F it, leave nothing behind. I drank it all. And one of the first things that popped into my mind was, now I have no Powerade. I have nothing to hydrate me if I need to be hydrated again. But it was like that final hoorah that made me say, you know what? Everything is on the table. There's nothing left in the tank. Everything's on the line. That mindset shift led to me speedy recovery. What if you started to live your life like you weren't holding back anymore, like you weren't trying to conserve or to portion off? And I'm not saying that we should be disastrous in how we operate. For example, maybe you have money in your bank account. I'm not saying that you should go spend all your money and say, you know what, YOLO, right? Like, I still have money in my bank account when, I was on the floor and thinking, this was it. I still have money when I could have bought another Powerade. And I said, this is the last one that I had. It wasn't that. It was the idea of what was right there, what was tangible to me, what was, something I was holding on to, what was going to make me whole or full or help me heal. And that's what happened. I said, I'm not going to hold back anymore. And so I think of, everything that I've said today, from my client to that Powerade. Are we holding back? Are we biting our tongues? Are we halting our actions? And I can tell you, for my client, he wasn't holding back. He was a man who was built on conviction. And so he did what he needed to do, even if it didn't lead to good results in the end, but it makes you appreciate your life, and it makes you appreciate your journey, and it makes you appreciate the opportunity for you to say, you know what, I'm not going to hold back. And it helps you understand that you can do the things that might feel scary or might be unsafe, because if you can say your life was worth something, was it meaningful? Maybe you don't know that right now. Maybe you won't know it until you're dead and gone. What type of impact are you making every single day? Because life can come and go before you know it. And if you have experienced something, you can share that experience with someone else and save someone. I have people that have lost sons and children, young children, come on the podcast and they tell their story. And I just think, I couldn't imagine me having to go through that. And the person always says, I hope you never have to go through it. But then again, I don't get to make the rules in life. I just get to be a player. Now, some people play the game with all their hearts, and some people, they play in the sidelines. They're okay being bench warmers. But I believe those people who are too afraid to take action, they're going to have the most regrets later on in life. You can't hold back. You can't say, I'll save something for tomorrow. I'm going to leave some gas in the tank. And again, I'm not saying that you should, you should drive your car on empty and get home and then hope you can make it to the gas station in the morning. We plan, but how many people do you maybe let's not even use people. Let's use you. Do you plan? I'm talking more than just today or more than just tomorrow or the week. I'm talking about a lifetime. I'm talking about your 10-year plan. Do you have one? I ask people okay, tell me your 5-year plan. They go, I don't have one. Okay. So what do you want? What do you want out of life? If today was your last day, could you say with all your heart that you lived a good one, that you lived a fulfilled life, that there's nothing left for you to do? We have this podcast here, Coaching a Session, and it is pre-recorded. So even if something happened to me, the podcast episodes will still come out. It would definitely be an interesting thing for my family, because they would hear episodes that they might have never heard before. One day the episodes will stop. It'll be about 3 months now. We get 3 to 4 months of me releasing things and content that, is after me, right? But then they can always go back to episode 1 and listen to all the episodes, or they can go on social media, read, inspirational image, or go to my website and, read a blog or tune into a motivational video. All of those things will be there for as long as YouTube is there, as long as Buzzsprouts is there, my podcast hosting. And, of course, there could be an end to that, but how many generations? And with everything changing and digital and, and how technology is operating, I can only imagine, things like podcasts and things like videos that have been created are going to be always there, maybe uploaded to a satellite or a cloud. And so no matter what, because we can look back at history When we look at this, like the Sumerians and the Egyptians, and we can look at what they have accomplished, like the Egyptians with the pyramids, right? There's architects and engineers trying to figure out how in the hell did these people build these pyramids, right? With the technology that they had. And the conclusion is the technology that they had was far advanced to the technology that we have today. Even though we feel as if the technology we have today, the spacecrafts, the cell phones, etc., very different than the technology they had back then. But if they were able to move, 3,000-ton blocks, I mean, let's figure out how they did that, right? Because most people, they can't even move a sofa. Might be operating in a deficiency. We might be operating backwards. We can learn from the past if we allow the past to teach us. We can learn from a life as long as we have life. We can learn from our mistakes as long as we can understand them. Because in life, we're going to make many mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes are going to be big. Sometimes they're going to be, marginal, fractional, small things that might be like a little fissure. Eventually, if we don't do the work to repair them, to mend them, they could be a huge crevice, a huge abyss that starts to form in our life, our mind, our body, and our soul. That's what grief is. It feels like a huge gap missing in our life. It feels like, we're trying to do something, but what we're doing is not what we need to be doing. It's like we're running in a circle. It's like we know what we have to do, but yet we don't do it. And so today is an opportunity for you to not only understand the mission, but for you to step into it, for you to understand how potent life can be and how fragile life can be, for you to realize that you can make a difference or you can just be another person that existed. The choice is yours at the end of the day. You get to decide how you want to live life. You get to decide if you're going to live life that is full of meaning, or you're going to live life that is maybe meaningless. I encourage you to try to find the meaning, to try to find your conviction, to leave nothing left on the table at the end of the day. Go to bed exhausted and ready for the next day. Because when the next day comes and you can put your foot on the ground and take that first step, understand that you were given another opportunity to make a difference, to make a change. Because not everyone's going to have that same chance. So take this opportunity, take this moment, instill yourself with a mindset and intention that you're going to do something amazing with your life.